Earth, 4.5 billion years old. If you look around today, you see a planet teeming with complexity, from the microscopic architecture of a beetle's wing to the massive hydraulic power of a blue whale. The variety of life seems infinite. It feels as though this complexity has always been here, or that it accumulated slowly, grain by grain, over eons of gradual progress. But the rock record tells a different story. For the vast majority of Earth's history, our planet was a quiet, microscopic world. It was a planet of bacteria, slime, and silence. Evolution moved at a glacial pace, and then it happened. In a single, violent, geological instant, the rules of biology were rewritten. In a flash of evolutionary lightning, the oceans were suddenly filled with monsters. Hunters appeared, armor was forged, eyes opened. For the first time, almost every major animal design that exists today, including the blueprint for your own body, can be traced back to this one specific window in time. It wasn't just a step forward, it was a biological Big Bang. This is the story of the most significant event in the history of animal life. This is the story of the Cambrian Explosion. To understand the magnitude of the explosion, we must first understand the world that preceded it. We have to dial back the clock 600 million years to a time known as the Ediacaran period. If you were a time traveler standing on the shores of an Ediacaran ocean, the first thing you would notice is the silence. There are no birds in the sky. There are no insects buzzing in the air. On land, there is nothing but bare rock and dust. But even beneath the waves, the world is fundamentally alien. If you dove into these ancient waters, you would not find fish. You would not find crabs. You would not find anything with a face. Instead, the seafloor is covered in thick, rubbery mats of microbes, carpeting the sediment in layers of slime that harvest sunlight. Living among these mats are the Ediacaran biota, the first large multicellular organisms on Earth. But they defy easy categorization. They look like quilted mattresses, fern fronds, or fluid-filled bags anchored to the sea floor. Consider Dickinsonia, a flat, ribbed creature that could grow up to a meter long. It had no head, no tail, no eyes, and no limbs. It simply lay on the microbial mat, absorbing nutrients through its skin. These creatures were biological pacifists. They had no mouths to bite with. They had no gut to digest food. Crucially, they had no hard parts, no shells, no bones, no teeth. They were entirely soft-bodied organisms, living in a slow-motion world. There was no predation. One creature did not hunt another. Without predators, there was no need for defense. Without the need for defense in Durawam, there was no need for speed, sensory perception, or complex behavior. Evolution, in this era, seemed to be asleep at the wheel. For 3 billion years, life had been content to remain microscopic or simple. These Ediacaran organisms were an experiment in multicellularity, but they were an evolutionary dead end. They were fragile, they were immobile, and they were unprepared for what was coming. Beneath the surface of this tranquil garden, the chemical and genetic pressures were building. The stage was being set for a catastrophe that would wipe this soft-bodied world off the map and replace it with something far more dynamic. The silence was about to break. Around 541 million years ago, the geological page turned. We entered the Cambrian period. In the blink of a geological eye, a span of perhaps only 20 to 25 million years, the fossil record undergoes a radical transformation. The empty, quiet layers of rock are suddenly packed with complex, recognizable animal forms. This is the Cambrian Explosion. To grasp how profound this shift was, biologists use a concept called the body plan, or phylum. A phylum represents the fundamental architectural blueprint of an animal. Think of it like vehicle design: a bicycle, a sedan, and a fighter jet. Represent three fundamentally different engineering architectures. In biology, arthropods are one architecture, creatures with external skeletons and jointed legs. Chordates are another, creatures with an internal spinal cord. Mollusks are a third, soft bodies, often with hard shells. Before the Cambrian, the Earth had very few distinct body plans. By the end of this brief window, over 30 distinct animal phyla had appeared. Here is the most staggering statistic. Since the Cambrian explosion ended over 500 million years ago, evolution has not invented a single new animal phylum. Not one. Every animal that has lived since, from the dinosaurs to the woolly mammoth to modern humans, is just a modification of a body plan that was invented during this one explosion. Evolution created the main themes in the Cambrian, and it has been writing variations on those themes ever since. During this period, biology solved the hardest engineering problems all at once. Animals developed the first through gut, a digestive tube with a mouth at one end and an anus at the other, allowing for continuous feeding. They developed circulatory systems to pump oxygen to deep tissues. They developed gills. But the most critical innovation was the nervous system. For the first time, bundles of neurons began to cluster at the front of the animal, forming the primitive precursors to a brain. The oceans transformed from a passive garden into a chaotic, high-stakes arena. The era of the soft and simple was over. The era of the complex and dangerous had begun. What triggered this sudden burst of complexity? The leading theory points to a grim innovation: the invention of murder. In the Ediacaran, animals absorbed nutrients from the water. In the Cambrian, animals began to eat other animals. The evolution of the first true predators shattered the peace of the oceans and ignited the first evolutionary arms race. Enter Anomalocaris. The name means strange shrimp, but that understates the terror this creature represented. Anomalocaris was the world's first apex predator, in an ocean where most creatures were the size of a fingernail. Anomalocaris grew up to 1 meter in length. It was a giant. Its anatomy was built for the kill. Flaps along its sides undulated to propel it through the water with speed and agility. On the front of its head, 2 spiny, grasping appendages, looking somewhat like shrimp tails, could snatch prey and drag it toward a square, plate-lined mouth. This mouth acted like a nutcracker, crunching through the bodies of its victims. The existence of a hunter like Anomalocaris forced a response. If you were slow and soft, you went extinct. To survive, prey species had to innovate. This pressure drove the rapid evolution of biomineralization, the ability to extract minerals from seawater and turn them into solid armor. Calcium carbonate became the weapon of choice. Suddenly, animals were building fortresses around their bodies. We see the emergence of hard shells, spikes, and plates. Consider Wiwaxia. It looked like a small slug, but it was covered in scale-like armor and sported 2 rows of razor-sharp, vertical spines along its back. This was not decoration. This was a defense mechanism designed specifically to make it difficult for a predator to swallow. Other animals chose a different defense: evasion. For the first time, we see evidence of animals burrowing vertically into the sediment. They weren't just crawling on the surface, they were digging in to hide. The dynamic between predator and prey created a powerful feedback loop. Better armor forced predators to develop stronger jaws. Faster prey forced predators to develop better swimming mechanics. This cycle of escalation drove evolution to move faster than it ever had before. Out of this chaos, the winners of the genetic lottery began to emerge. These were the groups that established the dominance they still hold today. The undisputed kings of the Cambrian seas were the arthropods. This phylum includes the famous trilobites. If you visit a natural history museum, you will see rows of these fossilized creatures. They look like armored woodlice or prehistoric cockroaches. Trilobites were incredibly successful. They diversified into thousands of species, occupying every niche in the ocean. Some were scavengers, some were predators, and some were filter feeders. Their secret weapon was their exoskeleton. It provided protection, but it also provided a rigid framework for muscles to attach to. This allowed for leverage, strength, and complex movement. The jointed legs of the trilobite were a mechanical marvel, allowing them to scuttle across the seabed with precision. While the arthropods ruled the bottom, the mollusks began to diversify. Ancestors of modern clams and snails developed twisted shells to protect their soft interiors. The ancestors of the cephalopods, squid, and octopuses began as small, shelled creatures, experimenting with buoyancy and jet propulsion. But amidst these armored giants, there was a small, unassuming creature that is far more important to us, Pikaia. At first glance, Pikaia looks unimpressive. It resembles a small, flattened eel or a worm, rarely growing longer than a human finger. It had no shell, it had no claws, it had no teeth. In a world of armored tanks, Pikaia seemed vulnerable. But Pikaia possessed a revolutionary internal structure, the notochord. This was a flexible, stiff rod, running the length of its back. It served as an anchor point for muscles, allowing the creature to swim with a distinct side-to-side motion. This notochord was the precursor to the vertebral column. Pikaia is an early member of the chordate phylum. It is our ancestor. While the arthropods relied on external armor, our ancestors bet on an internal skeleton. This design allowed for something exoskeletons did not: the potential for massive growth and structural support for large, complex nervous systems. Tracing the line from Pikaia forward, we see the evolution of the first fish, then amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and finally, us. We are all the great-great-grandchildren of a worm-like creature that managed to survive the Cambrian killing fields. question that has plagued paleontologists since Darwin is simple. Why then? Why did this explosion happen 540 million years ago and not a billion years earlier? There is no single smoking gun. Instead, scientists believe it was a perfect storm of three converging factors: oxygen, geology, and genetics. First, the fuel. Oxygen. Complex. Active animals have high metabolic rates. Building shells, swimming fast, and powering a brain requires massive amounts of energy. For billions of years, Earth's oceans were oxygen poor, but leading up to the Cambrian, oxygen levels spiked. This physiological threshold was finally crossed, allowing animals to grow larger and burn energy faster. Without high oxygen, a predator like Anomalocaris would simply run out of breath. Second, the building materials, geology. Just prior to the Cambrian, Earth underwent massive tectonic shifts and rising sea levels. Erosion washed millions of tons of minerals, calcium, phosphate, and silica from the continents into the oceans. The water became a chemical soup, rich in the raw materials needed to build skeletons. The animals didn't just decide to build shells. The geology of the planet handed them the bricks to do it. Third, the motivation, ecology. As we discussed, the invention of the food web created an adapt or die scenario, but there was also the opening of new niches. As animals began to burrow, they oxygenated the mud, creating new habitats. As algae reefs grew, they created vertical structures. Life was creating space for more life. It was a unique moment in time where the chemical capacity, the physical materials, and the ecological pressure all aligned perfectly. How do we know any of this? The fossil record is usually biased toward hard things. Bones and shells fossilize well. Jellyfish and worms do not. In a normal environment, a creature like Pacaya would rot away without a trace. But we have been incredibly lucky. We have discovered specific sites known as Lagerstätten, sedimentary deposits that preserve soft tissue in exquisite detail. The most famous of these is the Burgess Shale in the Canadian Rockies, discovered in 1909 by paleontologist Charles Walcott. This site is a window into a vanished world 500 million years ago. The Burgess Shale was the edge of a steep, underwater reef. Occasionally, mudslides would sweep entire communities of animals down into the deep, oxygen-free abyss, buried instantly in fine sediment. The bacteria that caused decomposition couldn't function. The result is a high-definition photograph of the Cambrian ecosystem. We can see the delicate antennae of trilobites. We can see the gut contents of worms. We can see the soft eyes of predators. Another site, the Chengjiang Biota in China, provides an even earlier look at this explosion. These fossils show us that this wasn't a local event. It was a global phenomenon. These sites have revealed creatures that defy explanation. Evolution was experimenting with body plans that look like hallucinations. To modernize, take Alpabinia. It had 5 mushroom-like eyes, mounted on stalks. Protruding from its face was a long, flexible nozzle with a claw at the end, which it used to pass food to its mouth, located under its head. It looks like a creature designed by a committee that couldn't agree on anything. Or consider hallucigenia. When scientists first reconstructed it, they put it upside down, mistaking its spines for legs. It was a worm-like creature with 7 pairs of rigid stilts and a row of defensive spikes. These weird wonders show us that the Cambrian was a time of high-risk experimentation. Evolution was throwing everything at the wall to see what stuck. Many of these designs, the 5-eyed nozzle creatures, were evolutionary dead ends. They vanished, leaving no descendants. The Cambrian was a funnel. Many designs entered, but only a few, the efficient ones, survived to populate the future. Perhaps the most underrated innovation of the Cambrian Explosion was the invention of sight. Before this era, animals navigated by chemical gradients, or touch. They lived in a world of smell and texture. They were effectively blind. But in the Cambrian, the lights turned on. Trilobites developed, crystal eyes. Their lenses were made of calcite, the same mineral found in limestone. These were compound eyes, similar to those of a fly, capable of detecting motion and forming images. Anomalocaris possessed eyes with 16,000 individual lenses. It had vision sharper than many modern insects. The impact of vision cannot be overstated. It changed the nature of interaction. With sight, a predator could target a specific victim from a distance. With sight, a prey animal could identify a threat before physical contact was made. This drove the evolution of camouflage. If you can be seen, you need to hide. We begin to see patterns and colors evolving not for display, but for concealment. But vision requires more than just eyes. An eye is just a camera. It needs a computer to process the data. The influx of visual information, color, depth, motion, light and shadow, forced the rapid expansion of neural processing power. To handle sight, animals had to build bigger brains. This cognitive leap allowed for complex behaviors. Animals began to strategize. They began to calculate distance. The concept of intent entered the biological equation. The Cambrian didn't just give animals bodies, it gave them the hardware to perceive reality. Despite the wealth of fossils, there is a fierce debate in the scientific community regarding the speed of the explosion. Did it truly happen in a 20 million year burst? Or is that an illusion? This is the long fuse hypothesis. Geneticists argue that the machinery required to build complex animals, the DNA code, must have evolved tens of millions of years earlier. They point to a set of genes called Hox genes. These are the master control switches of development. They tell an embryo where to put the head, where to put the legs, and how long to make the spine. Remarkably, a fruit fly and a human share many of the same Hox genes. The genetic toolkit is ancient. The long fuse theory suggests that the genetic software for complexity was written during the quiet Ediacaran period, but it couldn't be deployed. The animals had the genetic blueprints to build legs and shells, but the environment, low oxygen, low minerals, wouldn't allow it. In this view, the Cambrian explosion wasn't the invention of these genes. It was the unlocking of their potential. It was the moment the environment finally said yes to the genetic capabilities that life had been hoarding for millions of years. Whether it was a sudden genetic revolution or the unleashing of a dormant potential, the result was the same: an irreversible change in the trajectory of life on Earth. As we look at the natural world today, we are looking at the aftershocks of the Cambrian Explosion, the division of life into predators and prey, scavengers and grazers. Began there. The dominance of the arthropods on land and in the sea began there. The vertebrate lineage that led to us began there. The Cambrian taught life how to be big. It taught life how to be fast. It taught life how to see. It was a time of ruthless selection. The strange, experimental forms like Opabinia were weeded out, leaving the most efficient architectures to inherit the Earth. We are the product of the winners. If the history of life were a 24-hour clock, the Cambrian Explosion would occupy only a few minutes. Yet, in those few minutes, the character of our planet was defined. Earth stopped being a static ball of rock covered in slime and became a dynamic, interconnected, and violent biosphere. We often look to the stars and wonder what alien life might look like. But if we want to see true aliens, we don't need to leave the planet. We only need to look back to the Cambrian seas. It was the dawn of the animal kingdom. It was the moment Earth became truly alive. And the echo of that explosion is still ringing in the genetic code of every living thing on the planet today.